Who has two thumbs and finally reached infinite on Marvel Snap? This guy. My name is Scott Reed, and I am joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Shad Schubert.
And this is, of course, episode 163 of the Campus Comics Cast. And on this episode, we will be discussing Gideon Falls by Jeff Lemire and The Killing Joke by the author and Brian Bolland. But first, we actually, in all seriousness, we need to take a moment to pay our respects to the late, great John Romita Sr., who passed away on June 12th at the age of 93. Jazzy John Romita was probably the most important person at Marvel after artist Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby kind of left to work with Stan Lee, and basically was Stan Lee's right-hand man for any comic production, character design, character ideas, you know, anything. So, Mike, you got any comments, anything you want to say about John Romita Sr.?
Just that, I mean, he's definitely, I think what I put in the note to you when you passed along the news was that he's another icon that's left us. And even though I hadn't read a lot of what he had drawn, he's had some of the, I think he had the Gwen Stacy introduction, right?
Well, So he had the death of Gwen Stacy.
Oh yeah, death of Gwen Stacy, and then also
and
the
Green
introduction
Goblin.
of Mary Jane, right?
No, Mary Jane was Ditko. So that's all pre. So
Well,
he started on issue 39 of Amazing Spider-Man. So everything, and if I remember right, Gwen Stacy was introduced in 33, and Mary Jane Watson goes back, quite a bit further than that. And I'll double check it while you talk here.
I just remember seeing like an homage or like a replica of the this is your lucky day, buddy. Or what I thought it was by Adam Hughes, but I thought that it said that it was after John Romita. But
he had he changed their appearances. So she quote unquote cameoed in Amazing Spider-Man 25, but her first full appearance was in 42. So they talked about her prior to.
I see. While
Ditko was the artist, but John Romita Sr. got to be the actual artist on her creation. So yeah, she has this kind of a weird little history where you don't see her. It's just kind of like that. It's not quite as bad as the neighbor in Home Improvement that you only ever saw him peeking over the fence. Wilson, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So it's like the neighbor was supposed to introduce the niece, and then it didn't happen. It didn't happen, and then finally it happens in 42. So yes, Romita Sr. Would have done all the art but her name was mentioned prior to. So yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, one of the things I remember thinking years ago, there was like my wish list of Marvel artists that I wish they would come over just for a bit to DC, because I was a big DC fan, and Romita Sr. and Buscema, and those are people they may have each done an entry in Who's Who, because I think there were a few Marvel studies that did that, but that's what I remember most about him. And unfortunately, all I know is what the common person knows, that if they know anything about comics, just how important he was. And he's got a legacy thing going on with his son, and I don't know if there's anyone, if J.R. has anyone in his family involved in comics or not.
I do not know that either. So I don't know, Shad, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I didn't know a lot. I'd say, being mostly a DC guy and an indie guy, there's not a lot that he spills over into, but that name you always heard for sure. And I was looking up in my collection what I have of his, and I was like, you got to give him props, because he got Adventures of Kool-Aid Man, Captain Planet and the Planeteers, and Star Wars droids. I mean, so it wasn't like he was just a superhero guy.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So. Yeah, I'm fortunate to actually, I didn't meet him, but I do have a sketch that he did of Spider-Man in my collection. And then, of course, I've got several John Romita Sr. books in my collection, specifically the ASM 121 and 122, Death of Gwen Stacy, Death of Green Goblin. I have both of those books in my collection. I'm happy to have them. So definitely a big loss. And he was still doing covers and stuff within the last couple of years, for sure, I think. So yeah. I had something that popped up as just like a 1 in 100 cover that he did.
Oh.
And one of the things that I remember him from was back in the 80s or 90s. Maybe it was, I don't remember exactly, but Marvel released this video on how to draw comics the Marvel way, and it's Stan Lee talking, but it's John Romita Sr. sitting at the drawing board doing all the drawing while Stan Lee is talking. So, and he did costume designs for like Punisher and Wolverine. So he was just, I think even like Firestar or something, not new, but a little bit more recent. So.
Was it him or Buscema that was kind of famous for not really even liking drawing superheroes?
I think it was Buscema. Buscema.
Okay.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it's Buscema.
Yeah, I thought it was.
But anyway, so he will definitely be missed. Definitely another, another icon that we have lost in the comics industry. So, all right. Well, we were going to I thought we should all do Flash hot takes, but at this point, I've been the only one who's watched it. So I'm just going to say it's awful. And then let's go on to I'm going to set, so I'm going to lower everybody's expectations, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Flash in a future episode. Some other industry news. Dark Horse just had a pretty substantial set of layoffs. And again, that's one of those things where it's making things not look so great for the comics industry. So, Shad, you got any initial thoughts on the Dark Horse layoffs?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where it's another company that relies heavily on IP. And we've seen this with IDW, them kind of backing off and going that direction as well. So it's like, okay, is it that is it the comic book industry specifically? Is it that people are taking their IP titles and they're going to different people? I mean, we've seen spoilers kind of, but Void Rivals is the new Transformers and G.I. Joe book, and Image has evidently the Transformers G.I. Joe license. Or Skybound does, or however it kind of comes out in the wash there. So does it have to do specifically with just the comic book industry changing, moving, and what it's doing, or is it that the IP is moving around too?
What I remember reading is it was less about Dark Horse's performance than it was the parent company, which was more of a gaming company.
Yeah. The Embracer, is that what they were called? Embracer Group.
Out of Europe, I believe they were based, or are based. But it seemed, that's the take I got out of it, is that it really wasn't about Dark Horse. It's just the parent company, and of course that always affects, or that can affect the comic company if it's attached like that. But I don't know. I think Shad's right. I think a lot of this has to do with licensing and being able to move forward with new stuff like Image does. So we'll see. I'm not putting them down for the count yet.
And just to give credit where credit is due, so the article that we're primarily referring to is from the website's Comics Beat, and Heidi McDonald is the author of this article, and she does have the complete quote and announcement that came from Embracer Group. So to me, it's one of those cases where this is like one of those, their Embracer Group is like a very large company that is going up and buying smaller things. Apparently they just bought Dark Horse in 2022. So it's not much more than a year ago. Apparently this group also owns the rights to Middle Earth Enterprises, which owns the rights to the Lord of the Rings, which makes me think that if they've been working with Amazon and how much money Amazon had to pay to get the rights to, and maybe I guess if they're European, then, the U.S. rights are different than the international rights, and maybe that has something to do with it. But man,
and it could be just the video game division of the video game rights to Middle Earth, to that stuff. Who knows?
Because like there was that time where there was like the Hobbit had a game, but it was a different company doing like Battle for Middle Earth.
It was all over the place.
Yeah. So anyway, who knows what type of rights that they have, but it seems like that's something that they should have some pretty good rights to. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't say anything in here specifically about what percentage or how many, if any, of the layoffs actually come out of Dark Horse themselves. So it will be interesting to watch the previews catalog and see what's going on with Dark Horse, because we know things have not been great for Valiant and IDW, and what was the other, Aftershock? Was Aftershock the other big company that we've seen?
I think Aftershock didn't have any new titles. It was just all reprints and trades and things like that.
I think that was the case with Valiant as well. So anyway,
and Dark Horse had moved to the back of the book in the last previews that we had seen. It's interesting to know that they are owned by the company who owns at least some rights to Middle Earth and the Lord of the Rings franchise. I'd like to see some Middle Earth comic books. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be good. And there's a Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering version that's out soon or already out or whatever. So I don't know. I think there's gonna be some renewed interest in Lord of the Rings if that game takes off with its tie into Magic. So
cool.
I think there's some hope for Dark Horse. I'm not writing them off either, Mike.
No, not yet.
I think you're right there. So. One more piece of information before we jump into Gideon Falls is there is now actually apparently an official trailer for Kraven. I probably should have double checked this. I'm trusting Key Collector whenever I got a notification.
It is legit.
Okay, so I got a notification that there was a leak trailer. Then I got another notification that there was an official trailer. So apparently, thank you, Shad, for confirming. So we do apparently have an official trailer for Kraven. So go check that out, and we will talk about that next time as well. So, all right. Anything else you guys want to add before we dig into Gideon Falls?
Circling back to the Flash, because that already puts me uneasy. I was looking at the reviews because I haven't done that yet, trying to stay spoiler free. But yeah, it's 66% by critics and 85% by the audience. So do you feel like you had your critic hat on or fan hat on when you came up with your assessment?
I always go into these movies with the fan hat on. So, you can leave all the Ezra Miller nonsense at the door. I don't want to say too much, but there were a couple of things that I really, really enjoyed, but the bulk of it with Ezra Miller was again, my big pet peeve is we're playing all of our heroes for laughs. I don't want it all to be comedies, and that's what we're kind of moving towards. So,
well, I'm hoping actually we're moving away from that actually with this movie.
We did not.
There was only so much James Gunn could change probably, and probably really nothing. So. Yeah.
I did see where he made an announcement that Blue Beetle will be the first character within the DCU, not the DCEU, but the DCU. So
okay.
He's officially, I guess, maybe with the performance of the Flash, is drawing the line and going, all right, just so everyone knows, Blue Beetle is where we're starting.
Clear mark of demarcation. Yeah. Clear line of demarcation.
Oh, and for people who want to stay in the theaters, there is one post-credit scene. It's all the way at the end. It is also awful. So yeah. Okay. I do want to talk about the couple of things that were really, really good in the Flash movie. There are a couple of highlights, but I just don't want to give away any spoilers, so
we'll do that next time then.
The two of you haven't seen it. I don't want to spoil anything. So
yep.
All right. But something I am going to enjoy talking about is Gideon Falls, Volume 1, The Black Barn. This was written by Jeff Lemire with art by Andrea Sorrentino, colors by Dave Stewart, and lettering by Steve Wands. Now, I've got a issue by issue, not super long synopsis. I do think it's kind of important, and you guys have to help me on this just a little bit because I feel like I've left out some important facts. But I have identified like 4 characters that I think are super important to this story. So I think it kind of helps to kind of have these characters nailed down before we kind of go in and discuss the issues. That way, when we are introduced to these characters, we don't have to like go in and I think it makes the issue synopsis shorter. We don't have to explain every little thing that they're doing, right? So these are the 4 characters that I have as being most important. The first one being Norton. He is what I would consider our main character. He's this very dysfunctional, paranoid man. He has no memory of some events that took place before he was the age of 8, when he was just found wandering the streets. Since that time, and I don't know exactly I don't know if it says how long he has been, since he's been found, but he's either been institutionalized or been undergoing counseling for some severe issues, paranoia, obsessive compulsive types of behaviors. And one of his current problems is that he feels the need to search through garbage to collect pieces of wood, nails that he says are from something. He doesn't really know exactly what it is, but from something that he needs to be collecting. All right. Now, our second important character, unless you guys want to say something about Norton, if I think I have something important I've left out.
No, I think you described him perfectly.
Did we ever? I read this 3 times, and I didn't write down if we ever got a last name for Norton. Did we ever get a last name for Norton? Or was Norton his last name?
No, Norton's his first name, and I think I've seen it somewhere, but it's not important, I don't think.
Okay. And maybe when we flip through, a name will pop up. Now, the second character is Father Wilfred. Father Wilfred is a priest who has been sent to Gideon Falls by the quote-unquote bishop. He's going to replace a deceased priest named Father Tom, who died under some somewhat mysterious circumstances. Father Wilfred has a somewhat checkered past, and probably not even has a checkered past. I probably could omit somewhat checkered past.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and has been moved from parsonage to school to a different parsonage. Apparently he has some drinking issues, maybe some inappropriate relationships with some of his parishioners. Assault charges have been brought up in his past. So he's moving into this small town called Gideon Falls. All right, our third important character is Dr. Angie Zhu, and she is basically Norton's therapist who initially does not believe any of Norton's story, but based on the events that happened in Volume 1, she starts to believe what it is that Norton is telling her. And then the other character that I consider critical is the sheriff of Gideon Falls. Her name is Clara Miller, and basically she has a brother who disappeared when he was 8. That's a kind of a dead giveaway of some things that are probably going to happen moving forward. But she's also the daughter of a local character named Doc Sutton. So I don't know any of the other characters that you think are super important. I almost put Doc Sutton in this list as being one of the critical characters, but so far I think Clara Miller is more important. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean he could be, but I mean I think the little kind of which we'll get to it, but how he's the main character involved in the group, the plowman. It kind of puts him in a position, but having only 6 issues in this first volume, I don't know how long he'll be around or if he stays the main character or not. But I think the ones you named were right.
All right,
I'm assuming he might be significant in Volume 2, but he's really only significant in an issue and a half or so of this one.
Yeah, because it comes in later in the
yeah.
Story, so, all right. So issue 1, we meet Norton as he is searching through the city looking for pieces of the building that he is obsessed with. Back in his apartment, after he's collected a piece of said building, we see that Norton has gathered quite a collection of fragments. He's cataloged and basically up on shelves in his room. Over in Gideon Falls, we see Father Wilfred arriving in town. There he's greeted by Jean Tremblay, who basically helps him settle in. Important note here, Jean has a metal prosthetic claw that replaces her right hand. That will become important at the end of issue 1. Back in the city, we see one of Norton's therapist sessions. Basically, he's meeting with Dr. Zhu, who is trying to help him with his obsession. Again, back in Gideon Falls, Father Wilfred is awakened from sleep by an apparently, I did went over this in the intro, that he's there to replace the thought to be deceased Father Tom.
Right.
Well, he's awakened from sleep by an apparently living Father Tom, who then takes him on a bit of a chase. During the chase, Father Wilfred stumbles upon a black barn, which subsequently disappears. Then Wilfred finds some blood, which leads to the body of Jean Tremblay, who has her prosthetic arm protruding from her chest. All right. So, I don't know. Very solid entry issue into this story. I think we get a good feeling for all the main characters, kind of what they're about, what their purpose is going to be in the story. And enough about the Black Barn to know that it's something mysterious and ominous and that we should be, keeping an eye out for it. So what all do you want to add for issue 1?
I liked the introduction to 2 different stories going side by side. Felt really well paced. You're able to cut back and forth between the stories. and that was very noticeable. And then the artwork is really well done and has a good balance of, for the most part, very real reality, with kind of a gritty feel to this kind of horror crime mystery. But then every once in a while has a panel that is, or there's like the splash page in issue 1 where when Norton's in his therapy session and it's kind of his head's kind of tilting back and you kind of see the imagery is just in there really cool. And like when he sees the nail, and you've got like, it's all white with the bright red nail poking out, like almost like his spidey senses is tingling for it. So it has like a really good balance of mostly reality with a little bit of some out of their artwork too.
I should have looked up other things that Andrea Sorrentino has done. I know I've seen her name on several other projects, but it's awesome in this. So
Lemire and Sorrentino did the Green Arrow run was really well received.
Oh, she did that with him too?
Okay.
Okay.
I believe Andrea is a he.
Oh, okay.
Pretty sure.
They also have this whole world that they're building currently under Image. The two of them, they have that 10,000 Black Feathers and the Tenement, and all of that is their horror kind of universe they're building. That weirdly enough doesn't include Gideon Falls, though it seems like this would be the perfect kickoff point. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrea's a he he's an Italian gentleman.
Okay. Thank you.
It's really rare for me to see this opening series or this opening issue written so well. Like you said, it was a great introduction. Like what Chad said, the parallel storylines, not overly complicated. I've seen too many subplots start off too quickly, but what really gets me is that the art complements the writing so well, and it when you have art that almost puts your thoughts of the writing in the background, that's just unbelievable. Sometimes it just flows so well, but then you see panels where you're like, that is, I mean, I'm looking at, of course, you don't have page numbers unless I guess it's page 6 on the app. But just the way these 4 pillars with a circle at the top focusing on the piece of wood that he's collecting, Norton's collecting, and you're starting to get an idea, okay, what is it he's looking for? And you see that it's just a piece of wood or a little sliver or whatever. But then the next page, you get almost like what's that? It's almost like one of those
a fish eye
fish
view.
bowl, fish eye. Yes, that's it. Yeah, fish eye view of his apartment, and it's just striking. It almost makes it look two-dimensional. I just was amazed by that, and that continued on throughout the issue and the rest of this this volume. But I like a story. I mean, a priest with a rocky past is actually not that uncommon. I mean, I've known priests that smoke and drink, and I'm not saying I've known any that had necessarily the past of Father Fred, but I think you kind of see this as he didn't want to go there. The bishop made him, and the bishop clearly from the beginning knew more than what he was letting on.
Yes.
So that'll be an interesting story point for later. But seeing Father Fred sort of find some of his own redemption, and he's not a real pious guy, but not a lot of communities don't want a real pious priest. They just want somebody that kind of helps them out and helps the community. So, and I also like Dr. Shu or Zhu. I'm not sure which way you pronounce that.
It probably should be Shu. I who knows?
The only reason I think that is because the premier of China is XI and they pronounce it she. So
yeah, you are probably correct.
But yeah, that's
the story about if you speak 2 languages, you are
bilingual.
If you speak 3 languages, you are
trilingual.
And if you speak 1 language, you are
American.
Yeah. So
Shad's the only one that hadn't heard that.
I hadn't heard
that. So I'm showing my Americanism there, So
no, I mean it's just I could go on and on just looking at these panels. I thought that
I tell you what, if there's one thing, if I'm going to be critical, of
Yeah.
anything in this first issue. And they use this periodically. They use like these red circles, red coloring to identify some certain things. Like, whenever there's later in the first issue, I think there's that nail that's sticking out of the ground and like everything is black and white except for the nail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like that very first piece of wood that he finds, there's no red indicator, no red mark, nothing going on that one like there is through most of the rest of the volume. So, I wish they would have started that right on. So that way, whenever you see that red mark later on, that it's something tied. So it takes this happening a few times before you really kind of see what's going on with those red marks, red circles, red boxes that feature prominently through the rest of the story. So,
yeah. On page 24, just a last mention there, this image of Father Tom, the one that's supposed to be deceased, and it's his ghost or whatever, but that is one of the creepiest images I've seen in a comic book, I have to say.
Yeah.
He's also red. He's also complete red tone. Throughout the little vision or whatever's going on with Father Fred there, whenever he, is tracking the blood and sees the barn and then.
Well, even as he follows Father Tom stays red until he loses sight of him, basically.
Yeah, so. A big hook in this. I mean, no pun intended.
Yeah, I didn't mention the covers. I think these are all the A covers, but it's basically like this plat map, but the it's laid out so that you see somebody's face, So the first issue is Norton, the second issue is Father Wilfred, and each of the main characters, kind of has their face on the cover of one of these issues. So they're really, really well done, and it makes them tie together very, very well. So,
and I had heard Sorrentino and Lemire both, they immerse themselves in their projects, even if they are slow to come out. I don't know what the pace was when this full 27 issues came out in individual comics, but it's worth it when you see even these covers. I mean, that looked like there's enough detail in that it had to take some time.
Yeah.
And just to add a couple of things that they have done together, there was a mini series through Image called Primordial that they did that came out last year. And then they also did together the Killer Smile series for DC, the Joker Killer Smile, and then the Batman Smile Killer.
I didn't know those, but I had the first issue of Primordial, but I never even read it. So now
Black
I'm
Label.
Visit it. Yeah.
That was all like Black Label books, and that came out in 2020. So they've been working together. Well, Green Arrow was the first thing that they had done, and then they've continued to work through that since 2013, 2014. Continuously with projects.
Cool.
I might be in the minority, but I'd rather see Lemire work with another artist. I'm not a big fan of his art. I know that's
blasphemy
too. Just sad, but when you see, this is the kind of style I like. Michael Lark does similar work. It's there's others, but it's just a matter of taste, is all it is. But
are you trying to say that you think Jeff Lemire his artwork is stylized? Wait, that's me.
Never
me. Sorry, yeah.
But I could see this could be like another like pairing where you're gonna like Brubaker and Phillips. There are people that they will exclusively buy books by that pair just because of their what they produce together as a team.
Absolutely.
All right, so issue 2, Norton is on a walk with Dr. Shu. Okay, I got to pause now because who basically allows Norton to dig through some trash as long as he will tell her what it is that he is looking for. So Norton breaks down, explains to Dr. Shu about the Black Barn. All right, back in Gideon Falls, Father Wilfred is being questioned by Sheriff Clara Miller in the death of Jean Tremblay and recounts his story of seeing Father Tom and the Black Barn. However, during the investigation, the body of Father Tom is discovered. I guess I didn't put this in my notes, but it was believed that Father Tom drowned 2 weeks prior. They just never found his body, so they had a hard time believing that it was Father Tom that Father Wilfred had seen up and about and running around. But of course, his story then gets confirmed. Norton returns to his apartment to find that it has been broken into and his collection has been molested. In a panic, he returns to Dr. Shu, who absolutely believes he is just being paranoid. Back in Gideon Falls, the sheriff helps ID the body of Father Tom, and they find a nail in Father Tom's hand. Dr. Shu is then later leaving her practice, getting into her car, when she has a vision of not only the Black Barn, but of some malevolent individual standing inside of it, to wrap up issue 2. So, thoughts, comments on 2?
While Shad's looking, the one thing I noticed is that I think it was with this issue that Sorrentino started putting rectangles or squares around
I was
certain.
getting ready to say the exact same thing. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's to make sure we look that way or if it was some other stylistic device. It wasn't distracting, but it did make me curious as to why he was doing that.
Well, that was something I was mentioning in the last one, where like sometimes the nail was red, sometimes the nail wasn't red. You get that red square around, but whenever we see the nail in Father Tom's hand, the nail isn't red, the nail isn't identified as red, but the background color is all red. Father Tom was all red. So it clearly is supposed to indicate something to do with the Black Barn, but we don't know exactly what's going on. And then on that last page, you had that, or next to last page, I guess, you had that full page read with the Black Barn and the malevolent whatever individual standing kind of in the doorway. So there's definitely the red is supposed to indicate something to do with the Black Barn, in my opinion.
Yeah. It almost looks like Father Tom, his body's lying in a creek bed or a dry creek bed or something. It's not. I'm not really clear about. Maybe they said it somewhere where he was found, but if that's the case, there's a correlation with what they said he did, which was drown. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like.
But they also said that he hadn't been dead that long. So.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the conversation between Father Fred and the bishop. He's trying to. He's like, man, they got me pulled into the police. They think I killed somebody, and
like,
man, it's not a conversation. Yeah, right. Did you?
Then you got nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's probably what would happen if I ever called you Scott and I was in jail. Well, did you do it?
Did you do it? I don't know why, but anytime he talks to the bishop, it makes me think of Charlie's Angels. So, this is Charlie.
Yes, he's the Charlie of it all.
Yeah,
but who knows?
Well, because they do have he's very ominous. There we go. Good. Like he's behind the chair, and like you don't see him in the panels. Yeah. But yeah, I was going to point out the exact same thing. I liked the. It was almost like when you're playing a video game, at least the old computer games, and you needed a little hint, and it would just highlight the thing that you were supposed to do next. That's what the little box around there reminds me of. It's like, oh, this is kind of helping me put together the mystery.
Pay attention. Pay attention.
Which is great for someone like me who has hard time paying attention.
Well, but even, having read this 3 times, right, it was still nice to have those little reminders. And it's like you pick up little things each time you read this that you maybe didn't notice the first time or the second time. So the little details. So I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to read it more than once. And that's a disservice to myself and to this episode, because I think there is more to see. There's more to extract from this, and I'm going to reread it anyway because I liked it so much. But this is pretty classic stuff.
Yeah, this is going to become a problem, because if we keep reading stuff that's good, I'm never going to read any of the stuff I've been buying. I'm going to have to go. I've got to read the last 5 volumes of Chew. I got to read. Now I'm about to read the rest of this. Fortunately, this is only 27 issues, so it won't be too bad. So.
Yes.
All right, so issue 3, just a real quick synopsis on issue 3. Dr. Shu tells Norton exactly what it is that she saw with regards to the Black Barn. Father Wilfred then discovers some of Father Tom's notes, speaking specifically about the plowmen, something that, Mike, you mentioned earlier on that we haven't really hit on yet, the Black Barn, and a missing child, and subsequently goes to see Doc Sutton. So here we get introduced to Doc Sutton briefly at the end of this issue.
Yeah, there's interesting. Again, talking about the art as much as anything, because the story is so easy to. It's got suspense, but it's not confusing or weird. It's not that kind of story. It's just my kind of horror story, really. But I find myself talking about the like on panel page 60 of the volume. It's the 2-page spread
Mhm.
of Norton's apartment with those concentric circles, and within each circle is pointing out one of the booby traps he's laid in the
Yeah.
apartment. Now that's pretty genius. I like that.
Mhm.
It's just so cool. It just shows, and there he is sitting on the floor. You can he just oozes with paranoia.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
My,
Now this, I know what you're saying, but one of the things that I don't know, I don't think confused is right, and I'm probably trying to read more into this than what I should. But a lot up until this point, when we had that red, it kind of pointed to being something to do with the Black Barn. Well, now it's not really, the red's not pointing to things that are specific
oh,
about the Black Barn. The red's pointing to things that are just dangerous. So
hmm.
maybe what it is the red points us to things that are dangerous as opposed to things that are directly related to the back barn. But I don't know, because like on the next page he picks up the,
The
the
sledgehammer.
sledgehammer, and the end of the sledgehammer is red.
I I think
Well,
Shad might be the one that's right here. Maybe it's just like one of those video games where it's trying to draw your eye to, hey, this is what's going to happen next. You should look at this. And I don't know. I guess we'll find out more.
What if we're just talking about red things? Also, I just noticed that Doc Sutton's door and door frame is red. Like, not, they're not making it red. Like, pay attention to this. It looks like his door is just red, and I wonder if that is intentional. Like
yeah.
when he knocks on his door and the door is opened, it's a red door.
Hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't look quite as obvious.
Yeah, it's not the same red though, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's not like highlighted red, it's just red. So it's like, okay, well, I wonder if that's an indicator of something dangerous, if red means danger.
Or for red, maybe red means protection.
Could be.
Maybe he painted his door red to protect himself from something. But who knows? I don't know. Hopefully they'll explain it in the next 20 something issues
Right.
at some point. So
This this issue and then everything kind of going together very much kind of pulls in together very Stephen Kingish. Like, it just
Hmm.
kind of gets that vibe, which I like a lot. And that's the simplicity and the familiarity. It kind of gives you that it's got a lot of, it's a good story, a lot of good characters, but it's simple enough that you can follow along without having to think too hard about it.
A lot of King's books, I agree with that comparison. A lot of King's stories had that talisman-like object,
Yeah.
that was the focus of the horror or uh, and that's where I think this Black Barn comes
Yeah.
in. That's what made me think of a Stephen King book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
issue 4. So Doc Sutton fills in Father Wilfred about the history of the Black Barn, and that how he and Father Tom and some others were part of the Plowmen. They're basically trying to hold back the evil. Father Wilfred basically refuses to believe him. Dr. Shu has another vision of the Black Barn, this time in her bathroom, and later confides in Norton about what she has seen. Father Wilfred goes to speak with the sheriff about his findings when the sheriff receives a call about a hostage situation that involves some of the father's parishioners. Upon investigating, they find that one of the town folks, Joe, I lost his last name,
Bennett, maybe?
Joe
Oh,
Reddy,
Ready. Joe
has
Bennett,
killed,
artist.
has killed the deputy who was also one of the plowmen. Now, I was flipping through this issue. I do want to read this. There's this scene. It's like a full page spread, where Dr. Shu is going over Norton's case files. So I just want to read this really, really quick, because I think it's important for the story and probably for some of the things we're going to learn in the next couple of issues. But case file 2351, Norton Sinclair. If you're following along on the app, it is on page 80. Known relatives, none. Norton's early history is unknown. He was found in the streets as a child of approximately 8 or 9 years of age. Norton knew only his first name and seems to be suffering from amnesia and disorientation. After an extensive and fruitless background search by Child Welfare Services, Norton was committed to St. John, the Evangelist Catholic Orphanage, where he stayed for the next 7 years. Norton was diagnosed with severe depression, anxiety, and early signs of schizophrenia. So that's kind of, where Norton is coming from and what Dr. Shu is working with to try to help Norton with.
And assuming Sinclair is then just is an adopted last name that he didn't have since he didn't know his last name when he was found.
Right.
And since they couldn't find any information, they just gave him that name. Yeah. So I don't know. Any comments on issue 4?
Go
ahead.
No. On that page right after or 3 pages after the case file review, you know when Dr. Shu sees in the mirror an image of the barn, then she goes back to the mirror and she sees, almost like it's a portal, she can see someone sitting in a workshop,
which is Joe Reddy.
And that's Joe Reddy.
That's okay. Joe Reddy.
I wasn't clear on that, but okay, that's what I was
asking. Because he has the hammer.
Oh, right? Of course. Yes.
Yeah, and then the hammer is what he used to kill the deputy.
Yep. Okay.
Which we'll see that later on. So I guess you don't know that at that point. You learn that later on.
Yeah, that's why I need to read this again. Chad,
well, I was actually right in that same spot. I was the following 2-page spread with the kind of infinity of the blocks that she kind of goes into in her vision of seeing
the Escher thing.
Is just a wild. It's one of those little things I was talking about from issue 1, where it's every once in a while you get this panel or these couple of pages where it's just kind of goes outside of this reality that you're seeing the rest of the time. And I'm curious where they take that into the further volumes.
And I'm looking at that, and on the left half of that, they kind of have that red that they have identified with the black barn, but on the other side, it's kind of a different red with a different shading. And is that supposed to mean something? I don't know.
On the left side, it looks like it's a red shaded top of, like a map, an overhead view of a map, whereas the right side looks like a void, just a red void.
And it could also be because the left-hand side is city and the right hand side is country, but who knows?
Yeah, could be.
Anything else you want to point out in issue 4?
I just like the relationship being built between the priest and the sheriff. It's a good dynamic. Makes the story move along well. They seem to be the two most pragmatic people there. No one, even Dr. Shu at this point, is bought in on the red barn or the black barn, but I just like them as sort of like the pillar or the center point for the story.
They know that initially, even though they didn't trust each other, they have to come to trust each other, and they're both taking steps to, she came and apologized to him. He brought her the information that, he had found. So I like the way that they're working on that relationship as well. So
now, on the other hand, while I can sympathize with Dr. Shu's situation, she's breaking all of the cardinal rules of professionalism and pulling a Harley Quinn with Norton.
Yeah, right.
Falling in love with her patient.
All right, issue 5.
Yep.
Okay, so Joe Reddy had killed the deputy. Joe manages to escape, kills his wife on the way out. The sheriff gives chase, but Joe vanishes, and only this large rectangle is found in a wheat field, along with a bloody knife. Back in the city, Dr. Shu convinces Norton to go under hypnosis to try to remember more of his past. This hypnotic regression leads Norton back to the barn, or more specifically, the barn door. Back in Gideon Falls, the sheriff, Doc Sutton, and Father Wilford discuss the events, and we learn that the sheriff had a brother who went missing, and one piece of evidence was the large rectangle area that was found in a field. To Doc Sutton, this means it all leads back to the black barn, but the sheriff refuses to believe it and leaves. After she leaves, a gunshot is heard. Father Wilfred then, after going outside, sees Joe Reddy carrying Sheriff Clara Sutton off, actually it's Clara Miller, excuse me, off into a large barn door, and then subsequently gives chase.
Yeah, this is, you can just feel everything's ramping up here in the penultimate issue. I thought, again, referring to page of the actual collection, page 98, the sequence where Joe throws the sledgehammer at the sheriff and kind of disables her. I thought that was pretty. I mean, for art, it really told you exactly what was happening and how that sledgehammer hitting her in the shoulder could make her drop the firearm. There's just a lot of that kind of stuff in here.
And that red square around that sledgehammer.
And the red square, yeah.
It's a very Watchmen-looking page with all of the, rectangles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very action-packed issue. I mean, we find out so much. We find out about the weird squares that are happening in the fields. We find out the relationship between Doc Sutton and Clara, and we find out we're seeing all of these kind of a lot more of the odd imagery, the drawings of the barn and the kids that are, or the people that are hanging or whatever they're doing in there, the kind of mind, I guess it's Norton in his mind headspace that we see all of those panels.
You mean that panel where it's like kind of a surreal thing where he's dropping down?
Yeah.
And
there's
sort of falls into a liquid that was the city, or I don't know, just
yeah. And then there's the big door, and then we see the most amount of barn black and white red door stuff all in there as well. And so it's just a lot happening in this issue. This is probably my favorite one.
Yeah.
Just because it's just bam, bam, bam. It's just action after action. You go, are we still in the same issue?
Yeah. I'm going to jump back to page 103 in the digital version, just because you have this. It's just where Norton and Dr. Shu are together in Norton's apartment. And you have at the top the city skyline upside down, and then you have the red down here at the bottom, which then leads in. You notice those next few pages are red, but I think that little city skyline up at the top is a hint for something that's going to get revealed at the end of issue 6.
I think that you're right.
But it's one of those things. The other previous times I went through this, I did not notice that. It didn't stick with me. So there's so much that's still popping out, and part of it is because like right now I'm looking at it full pages, and as I was reading it, I was doing it panel by panel, and some of this background artwork just didn't pop up. So that's for those who, want to have a reason to read things full page, that's one of the arguments, because sometimes you don't get the full impact of the art. You're just seeing reading the word balloons. So, all right. So issue 6.
Sure.
All right. So Norton and Dr. Shu discover and reassemble fragments of the door that apparently brought Norton to the city. Inside the Black Barn, Father Wilfred goes through a series of, I'm just going to say, psychedelic experiences that clue us into some of his past. Father Wilfred makes a choice inside of the barn where he can either learn everything about the barn or save Clara, and he chooses to save Clara, which Joe Reddy, who I guess is acting as the force for the barn at this point, basically says he made the wrong choice. Father Wilfred finds Clara, confronts Joe Reddy, and then the father, after they struggle over the gun, ends up shooting and killing Joe Reddy.
Yeah.
Move forward. We're in a hospital where Clara is recovering, but she has no recollection of any events that occurred inside of the Black Barn. Back in the city, Norton and Dr. Shu decide that they will rebuild the Black Barn, and we also learn that the name of the city where Dr. Shu and Norton live is also named Gideon Falls, with a population of 6.4 million, as opposed to a few people like it is in the rural version of Gideon Falls. So that to me is kind of like a big clue of something that's going to be happening moving forward.
Yeah.
That blew me away, that whole revelation that, this big city is Gideon Falls. And now it makes me think it's a multi-dimensional type thing. That maybe the barn is a portal into another universe, or it kind of gives a little bit more of a science fiction element to it than the horror. But hey, some of the best stories are sort of blended genres. I have no fear about Lemire making something like this work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a part of me when Joe Reddy kind of showed up that we were going to start dealing with some sort of exorcism demon kind of situation, and it seems as though, because you get a priest into a story and you kind of go, well, that's easy. An easy enemy of the priest is the demon inside a person, and so it seems as though that's not the case, at least as of right now, that it's not just possession that's happening, that it's something much different and could be something that has to do with this. So I'm hoping we're staying away from an exorcism story just for the sake of that. It just seems like easy fodder at this point.
But having said that, though, this is palpable evil, like on page 135, and with the father having this, basically you don't know who it is, and well, you do know because the previous page has basically a picture, an image of the crucifix with Jesus on the cross, and he starts speaking to the priest, and so you don't know if that's. It seems to me that is less in the priest's head and more in the form of some real evil. And then of course, I don't know. Is that supposed to be Joe Reddy that's telling him he made the wrong choice, or is that the devil somehow?
Well, I think it's definitely represented on page, what is that? The page after 136. That's supposed to definitely be Joe Reddy, but it's Joe Reddy possessed by whatever it is.
I guess that'd be
inside the black barn. So.
Yeah. Even he looks like a possessed demon, or he looks like a demon with the red hair, and it's.
So I guess the big question for everybody is Shad, are you going to read volume 2?
Yes.
Yes. Mike, you going to read volume 2?
Yes, but to make sure that I do, we should say let's have a Gideon Falls Redux someday, and because that's how I make sure that I do it.
If it's homework, then you will do it.
You'll feel obligated to do it. Yeah. So
yeah, no,
I'm definitely planning on reading the next volume. So
yeah, yeah. It was really good. Or it's. I mean, I say it was as if it was past tense, but it's obviously just the first volume of, I don't know, maybe 5 volumes, would it be?
5 or 6. And some of the subsequent volumes are only 5 issues as opposed to 6. I'd say it's probably 6 volumes altogether, but I don't know. I didn't look. So
I will tell you right now, 6 volumes.
6 volumes. Okay. So
with the issue 27 being the only one in volume 6, so it must be an extra large issue. It's just called The End.
It's like what they did for Fables. What was it, 150 or something like that? They put out 6 issues in the last one. So
yeah.
All right. Grade. Who wants to grade first? I'll go first.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to give it a very fine -7.5. I definitely want to continue the story. It's up there. If it sticks to landing, would I bump my grade up? Absolutely, but it's definitely there. Makes me want to come back and read some more. So,
Shad, please go.
Yeah, I got it. I put it at an 8.5, a very fine plus. I really enjoyed this. I love the horror elements. I can't wait to read more of it, and probably also will raise it higher as things go on if it sticks it.
Well, I might as well split the difference. That's sort of cheating, but I'm going to go with a very fine 8.0. I certainly think this is a great read. Whether it's completely new territory, I don't think so, but nothing new is under the sun. I think that just the combination of these two talents, Lemire and Sorrentino, it just makes it really an enjoyable read. And it is a kind of, Lemire really is crafting a good suspenseful sort of gothic horror type story. And yeah, I don't know that I shouldn't probably go much higher than that. I think 8.0 would be good.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to The Killing Joke, which of course has the incredible artwork by Brian Bolland, along with being written by the author. And if you don't know who the author is, the author at one time was Alan Moore, who has disassociated himself from a lot of his previous work. But yeah, written by Alan Moore. And there's a little bit more to that story than I was aware of, which we'll talk about later on. But I think you guys are going to share the work on giving us a synopsis for The Killing Joke.
Mm-hmm. As soon as Mike unmutes himself.
Sorry, I was multitasking. First, I want to, before we get into the synopsis, but I want to just kind of give the full description that this came out in 1988 by DC Comics. It was a 48-page graphic novel, sort of I think it was prestige format they called it then too, and it provides what's sort of become one of the accepted or the most accepted origin story for the Joker. And that it's loosely adapted from the 1951 story arc, The Man Behind the Red Hood. And that whole Red Hood theme has stuck around with DC Comics for many, many years since. So I'll start, Shad and I will take turns with the synopsis. A concerned Batman visits Arkham Asylum and goes to Joker's cell. The Joker is sitting alone in his cell, playing with a deck of cards as Batman sits at the opposite end of the table. Batman tells Joker that the constant madness of their lives must end, or otherwise one of them will surely die at the hands of the other. Joker doesn't move and keeps playing with the cards. Batman grabs the clown's arms and he notices that he has white stains on his hands. He grabs him and discovers he is just a man dressed and wearing makeup to look like the Joker, who has escaped from Arkham. Joker is looking to buy an abandoned amusement park after he checks the whole place out. He kills the owner and claims the park as his own. However, Joker is lost in thoughts and he starts remembering memories from a past life. And I'll turn it over to Shad.
In his flashback, the man who would become the Joker is an unnamed lab assistant who quits his job at a chemical company to become a stand-up comedian, only to fail miserably. Desperate to support his pregnant wife, he agrees to guide two criminals into the plant for a robbery. During the planning, the police come and inform him that his wife has died in a household accident involving an electric baby bottle heater. Grief-stricken, the comedian tries to withdraw from the plan, but the criminals strong-arm him into keeping his commitment to them. At the plant, the criminals make him don a special mask to become the infamous Red Hood. Unbeknownst to the man, this disguises simply the criminals' scheme to implicate any accomplice as their mastermind to divert attention from themselves. Once inside, they almost immediately blunder into security personnel, and the violent shootout and chase ensues. The criminals are gunned down, and the comedian finds himself confronted by Batman. Panicked, the man deliberately jumps into the chemicals plant toxic waste catch basin vat to escape Batman, and is swept through a pipe leading to the outside. Once outside, he discovers to his horror that the chemicals have permanently bleached his skin chalk white, stained his lips ruby red, and dyed his hair bright green. This turn of events, compounding the man's misfortunes of that one day, drives him completely insane and results in the birth of the Joker.
Okay. The next chapter is the shooting of Barbara. Joker makes his move and he knocks on the door of Commissioner Gordon. Barbara opens the door and is shocked at the sight of the Joker dressed in a tourist outfit and pointing a gun at her. Joker shoots Barbara in the spine, and his henchman enters the house and knocks Commissioner Gordon out while Joker starts undressing the wounded Barbara and takes out a camera. Barbara is taken to a hospital, and the doctors tell Harvey Bullock that the damage caused by the bullet would make her unable to use her legs ever again. Batman visits Barbara, and when she recovers, she begs Batman to save her father from whatever the Joker has planned. Joker takes Gordon and imprisons him in a rundown amusement park. His deformed henchmen then strip Gordon naked and cage him in the park's freak show. He cruelly forces him to view giant pictures of his wounded daughter in various states of undress. Once Gordon completes the maddening gauntlet, the Joker ridicules him as an example of the average man, a naive weakling doomed to insanity.
Then Batman searches all over the city for the Joker with no good results. Suddenly, the bat signal beacons in the night, and Harvey Bullock gives Batman 2 tickets to the abandoned amusement park. As Batman arrives to save Gordon, the Joker retreats to the funhouse. Gordon's sanity is intact despite the ordeal, and he insists that Batman capture the Joker by the book in order to show him our way works. Batman enters the funhouse and faces the Joker's traps, while the Joker tries to persuade his old foe that the world is inherently insane and thus not worth fighting for. Eventually, Batman tracks down the Joker and subdues him. Batman then attempts to reach out to him to give up crime and to put a stop to their years-long war. The Joker declines, however, ruefully saying, "It's too late for that, far too late." Then he tells Batman a joke which reflects their current situation and is funny enough to make the normally stone-faced Batman laugh. While they are laughing, Batman reaches across to Joker. They stop laughing abruptly when the sirens of the police cars keep getting louder as they approach the two men. In the end, all noise ceases and only the rain keeps pouring down.
Who's first? Who's going to talk about it first?
Well, we've been talking about the synopsis, so I think it's fair for you to maybe talk a little bit about it.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about something that actually came after the book. So I was reading the deluxe edition, which actually has a couple of different stories, but there's this afterword that's actually written by Brian Bolland. And one of the things he says something about, so apparently Tim, I guess it was Tim Sale, did a introduction, and Brian Bolland got to read the introduction prior to this going to print on the deluxe edition. And he says, "There's a minor detail that Tim got wrong. Actually, it was me that asked Alan to write the book and not the other way around. The Killing Project was not a project instigated by Alan, nor was it, as far as I know, a labor of love for him. And it doesn't usually appear in a list of his greatest works. I was glad he agreed to write it, though." So basically, I've always given the primary credit to this to Alan Moore, and it turns out that it's actually Brian Bolland who should get most of the credit for this particular story, which in my mind is, probably one. If it's not, it's definitely up there in the top Batman stories, but it's almost certainly one of the best, if not the best, Joker story that is out there.
Yeah, I think that it's rife with controversy, and when I read this, I think it was on the way to Heroes Con last week. I hadn't read it since 1988, and even though I have the original issue at home, I hadn't read it. And I think what I read at age, say, 22 or so, it didn't resonate like some of the themes of this did when I read it the second time. And I was sort of blown away by some of the choices made. In fact, reading not just what you just related about what it being more of a Bolland idea. He wanted to collaborate, and he wanted to collaborate with Moore, but and then there was an issue with the coloring. He didn't like that the color that they hired, I forget his name, but he didn't make the flashback scenes in the washed out colors or sepia tones or whatever. It was more bright and garish, and he didn't like that at all. But so whenever they did this 2009 reprint, it was recolored by Bolland himself, and he did it the way he wanted. Before I get too much more into my overall thoughts, I'll let Shad or anyone else talk a little bit more.
I mean, overall as a story, it is a really well done story. The artwork looks great. There are some things that I think could have been different choices. I mean, I wrote more questions than I did actually notes to this. It was like, was this an Elseworlds story as it came out originally? In a sense, was it supposed to be canon? I guess
to my knowledge, DC has never really been super clear on where this actually lays inside of the Batman canon. It has come in and out of canon. So, like, for example, the best. I mean, we got Oracle from the Killing Joke.
Yeah.
All right. But then later on, whenever Batgirl can suddenly walk again, it's like, well, I got better. So it's kind of one of those things it just seems to have fallen in and out of favor, and I guess it just depends on who the editor-in-chief is with DC and how close they are, playing with continuity. I have no problem with it being in or out of canon, though one of the important questions also, which I'll save to later, kind of determines whether or not it is or is not part of canon.
Yeah.
So I think at the time it was not intended to be canon. It was intended to be Elseworlds before there was an Elseworlds.
Right.
But someone made the decision to, bring the fact that Barbara was paralyzed and reinvent her. I don't know if that would have been Chuck Dixon or how that all came about. I'm sure there are people out there that know this, and I would love to hear more about it, or I could research it some more as well. But I think this is. We talked about let's talk about what led to us picking this. A couple weeks ago, we were trying to decide what we were going to review on this episode, and Chad had the idea of one of the not Tom King, but the various
One Bad Days.
Specifically, the Tom King one was where I was aiming at. So yeah, you're right.
Sure, right, yeah. And Scott, you had the idea that let's go, because I hadn't even made that connection because I hadn't read this in
no, it was me
so
being
many
lazy
years.
Because we said we were going to do all One Bad Day, and then somebody said, well, there's not a Joker One Bad Day, and it's like, well, when you buy the complete collected edition, Killing Joke is Joker's One Bad Day.
Yeah.
Kind of put in reading. We were already reading all of the so like, do we really want 7 more books? So
you're cutting out a little bit.
You may have to.
I'll just say that we need to do one Killing Joke.
Yeah. We'd choose one to go with, and yeah, so we went with the original One Bad Day, which I mean, I guess that it makes all the sense in the world now. I wasn't putting together the connection that One Bad Day was mentioned multiple times within the story, and going, oh, that's where the tagline One Bad Day for the series came from.
I mean, that's the idea that, both Joker and Batman had life-altering tragedies. One bad day with the Joker, it was that day that he was, down on
Barbara had the worst bad day, I would say.
Sorry. Well, of course, yeah. But it starts out with Batman and that they were, it changed both of their lives. But then you're right. I think the culmination with the Barbara having the worst bad day. Because I don't know if that was originally their intent or not. Because I read somewhere that Moore actually asked if DC would be okay. He asked Len Wein, he said, if DC would be okay with crippling Barbara. And they said, well, I don't know if this is, of course, Moore is saying it's his best recollection, but he's quoting Len Wein as saying, yeah, okay, cripple the bitch, which is pretty brash. And, again, no one witnessed that. Maybe I don't know if anyone has corroborated that, but it's not a good sound. It's not a good look, and it's not a good thing.
No, and that's where I think a lot of my notes come from. Our intent with this story is like the good and the bad of this story is it's very well written, it's very well drawn, and clearly the intent wasn't to spin off and make Barbara a stronger, better character as the Oracle. She was a pawn, and did they need to take what they did to Barbara as far? Did sexual assault need to happen in order to get the point across to this? Is definitely where it gets a little rough. Is like, there are good movies that have horrible things in them, and there's good stories that have horrible things that take place, but did it have to go to that level to get to the point that they needed to get to
make the male characters to fall right into the reason that Gail Simone included Barbara as one of the female characters that had that were either killed off or were brutalized or whatever, just to further the story of the male protagonists.
Yeah.
And again, with the vision or the benefit of hindsight, you can see that a lot more than what I could at age 22. Yeah. I guarantee it. Now I'm more appalled by it than anything. But you're right. I think you take this part out of it, and it's probably, or even if you would have made Barbara Oracle, or show how she rebounded as part of this story and not leave it for someone 5 years later to do, it wouldn't have made her such a disposable character. And what you said about sexual assault, that's one of the big controversies. Was she or was she not sexually assaulted? Well,
I mean, taking your clothes off is sexual assault unwillingly.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yes. That is. Okay, we can go ahead and say this. We had a conversation with someone that's more of an expert on Barbara Garden than anyone in the world, and that's Stella, who does the Bat Girl to Oracle podcast. So there's your shout out, Stella. Because she either promised or threatened to listen to this episode. I don't know which it was. But it's I was explaining in our conversation that, in my line of work, I'm involved in investigations. I spent half of my career in investigations, including in a prison environment. You have a high proportion of sexual abuse, sexual assault cases. And by law, voyeurism, especially when someone is made disabled so that you can create that scene of voyeurism, is sexual abuse. It is sexual assault. So I'm challenging anyone, not to be a challenger out there but I'm challenging anyone to bring me some other idea on, because I know that's a debate as to whether or not it did meet that definition. Now, do I have access to Gotham City or the state that it resides in's laws? No, but I can tell you, in the general consensus and in conventional wisdom is that, and in the laws in most jurisdictions I've been involved in, it absolutely is sexual assault. So I can see the points that have been made in these years since this came out, up until the very present. I'm stepping off the soapbox now, Scott. So.
Okay. So there wasn't actually a long gap of time between this story and Oracle appearing. Oracle actually, and I wasn't aware of this till I just searched to look this up, but Oracle's first appearance is actually in Suicide Squad issue 23, which is from January 1989.
Really?
So, wow. Yeah, and this was in March of 1988, so you've got 9 months.
So that would have been John Ostrander that would have reinvented her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yep.
Yeah, makes you wonder. Well, and that was another set of questions, was outside of Barbara being attacked and obviously the birth of Oracle out of there, does any other part of this story get sequelized? I think the one question that we haven't asked is, does Batman actually kill Joker?
Kill Joker, right.
And does Jim Gordon have to deal with the torture and witnessing what happened to his daughter? Does any of that kind of pass on into any stories? And I don't know that. I know, Scott, you had mentioned another book that is kind of in tandem with.
Well, I would call it a prequel. And after
it's a prequel. That's right.
After you read Killing Joke, I really think you need to go and read the 2007 Brave and the Bold series, issue 33, written by J. Michael Straczynski, art by Clifford Chang. And I don't want to say anything else other than you should read it. If you've read The Killing Joke, you should absolutely read that story.
How does Three Jokers play into this?
I was just going to say that, because what Scott said at the beginning about how this has gone in and out of continuity at the whim of whatever writer or editor that's got the control, that's at the controls. I think that the ambiguity of the Joker's origin is what most people didn't want. They didn't want to know the origin, and I think that even during this story that Moore is saying he's an unreliable narrator. Joker says sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes another. So, it's he says I prefer it to be multiple choice, and that was sort of the big theme of the Three Jokers, which. Yeah.
Well, so one thing I can say about whether or not this is in continuity or not is when I read this the first time back in 1988, I considered it part of continuity. And I did not think that Batman killed Joker at the end of the story. Now, so it's just other people commenting on this book that brought up that question. Well, and you can kind of see where they're saying it's like you get the laughing, you get the laughing, you get the laughing, and then the laughing cuts off, but the sirens are still going, and then the sirens shut off. Mm-hmm. So you can understand how people could draw that conclusion, but it never in my mind at that time did I think that Batman killed the Joker. So,
although it's written and drawn just well enough to
have ambiguity, right?
And it was actually Morrison that later said that, right? Didn't you say that? Or am I hearing my own voice?
You're probably hearing your own voice there.
Yeah.
So.
It was Graham Morrison that actually pointed out that's that whole, because that's the killing joke. I mean, literally at the end, and the way it's drawn, you could see that. Okay, is he just sharing a good laugh and got his hand on his shoulder, or does he actually reach out and strangle him? So,
and even Brian Bolland plays around with that a little bit at the end of that afterward that he writes. Speaking of which, it's time I revealed what really happened at the end of the killing joke. As our protagonist stood there in the rain laughing at the final joke, the police lights reflecting in the pool of filthy water underfoot, the Batman's hands reached out and ...
Yeah.
So he doesn't even want to address, what happened, at the end, to leave it up to whoever.
I've been in the camp of he killed him in there. The story's so well weaved and plotted, the relationship between the two of them, that from the beginning, Batman goes to Joker to talk about one of us is going to kill the other one if we do not stop this. And like bringing up essentially mental health and awareness throughout of like, we have to stop because it's not going to end well for either of us. We're both going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to die. And by the end of it, it seems very plausible that the Joker has finally broken Batman to the point, because it's almost like Batman's always been aware of himself and aware of his surroundings and been very present. And so he's so present in this, and he's like, I'm going to go insane if you don't stop. And Joker cracks that last joke, and he's like, this is it. You're done.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's very plausible that he broke Batman at that point in time, and that Batman then gets committed, and that's the sequel story is Bruce Wayne in Arkham Asylum for killing the Joker.
And that's the irony of it, is that in the end, Joker proves the point of his torture. He was using Commissioner Gordon as the pawn, or actually Barbara as the pawn to break Commissioner Gordon, but actually everything combined. I tend to agree that if I absolutely had to pick, I'd say that this story being meant to be, an encapsulated, one and done, out of continuity story, that Batman killed him and became not the hero that we ever wanted or ever asked for. But hey, it leaves it up to the reader, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Which makes it. Unfortunately for the things that are icky about the story, it makes it such a good story, is because it does leave the reader the chance to kind of choose your own adventure at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we'll get to it when we talk about grading, when we rate it. But I'll give you some of the reasons for mine.
Let's see. I'm gonna check my notes here real fast. I don't know if I had anything else I wanted to bring out of this, other than to say, if it were released now, it would almost certainly be Black Label, right?
Yeah.
It would still wouldn't help us with whether or not it's in continuity or not.
Right.
And this artwork is 3 years post Camelot 3000, which we read not too terribly long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you can really see how much more polished his art is. And maybe it's just because it's a one shot as opposed to a maxi series that we actually get this more polished, final looking artwork. But man, it's just, the artwork's amazing.
And it could be the inker that he had for this book could have been different too. But yeah, it's definitely a step above Camelot 3000 artwork for sure.
Which wasn't bad, by the way.
Not
to imply
exactly.
That it's bad. Because he inks himself in this, but
he does.
Inking himself in Camelot 3000.
I think he did. Yeah.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah. So
he just gets better with time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Boland's pretty particular, so I bet he and I think he took his time.
Camelot 3000, actually, he penciled. It was Bruce Patterson and Terry Austin who did.
Okay. All right. There you go. Did you Scott, you said you read this in the deluxe edition.
Yes, I did
Online.
not. I skipped I started the extra stories, but I said, you know what? We were only reading Killing Joke, so I did not finish.
Yeah,
Same.
I didn't either. I was going to. I probably still will. It's The Origin of the Joker by Mark Waid with Bolland art, so I think I better read that. But the rest is mostly just some alternate covers and some other art.
Yeah. All right, ready to rate it?
Rate it. So I'll go first again, since I know I have my grade down. I'm gonna give a very fine 8.5. This is a book that is in my collection. I got it graded 9.8, sitting there in a cabinet someplace. So and to me, it is the, for sure, probably the best Joker story, and up there as far as one of the best Batman stories. So anybody who's a Batman Joker fan has to read this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's enjoyable. That's kind of weird, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's just an important story.
Yeah.
I gave it a 7.0, a fine, very fine, specifically based on the rules of the rating. It's an above average collectible with a major defect. I think it just has a major defect, and it's a really good book with a major defect, and that's why I gave it the rating I gave it.
That's exactly the language I was going to use, Shad, except I was going to go, and still am. If they had found some other way for Joker to break Commissioner Gordon, and there are other ways, I think I would have rated this probably 8.5, 9. I mean, this is sort of like Identity Crisis, where you had, the rape of Sue Dibney. I think technically it's wonderfully written, and the art is just fantastic. But I think the big, even more, was regretting what I read. He regretted making the decision, or even allowing, or DC allowing him to cripple Barbara, and then to do even worse, exploit her. Even you can say it's exploiting her for the sake of shocking or breaking Gordon, but it's also exploiting her to the readers. And you know how we are. We get pretty attached to our favorite characters. Now, I can't say Barbara Gordon was like one of my favorite characters growing up, but I can, she's pretty integral to DC lore. She's, is just a part of the Batman family. She's the original not the original. She's the original hyphenless Batgirl, but I think without that incident, or having just maybe some variation, I could have gone a lot higher, like an 8.5 or even higher. But I'm going to probably go with a 6.0, a fine, because I think it pulls it down to, and that's more of it's just a personal choice than anything. And I think it's, now, if you'd asked me also when I was 22, it'd have been a lot higher too. But I think at some point in I think having eyes wide open now with some things, I think, of course, also, you got to think about, it's been, how many years ago? 30 years ago. So
35.
Or
right?
35, yeah. So
it's as old as me.
It's as old as you. So I'm sure that part, it was of its age maybe, or more or less. It wasn't called out back then.
Yeah.
And now it's being called out, and I have to sort of agree with that calling out. And maybe in some level of protest, I have to go with the 6.0.
Yeah.
But I just remember this coming out in that same time frame as Watchmen and Return of the Dark Knight, where it was almost like this period of deconstruction for a lot of your heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if the Joker was as maniacal in the real world as he was supposed to be in the comic book world, how would he actually be portrayed? And would it be closer to this?
Mm-hmm.
It probably would be, which is also, that thing is like, if it were the real world, would you keep trying to reform this individual, or would you just kill this individual because that ultimately They're not going to reform, and they're going to continue to cause harm like this to other individuals, either on a small scale or on a massive scale. So I still see the story point that they're trying to make with this, irregardless of whether or not, Batman kills him at the end. So
yeah. I mean, you take out that one aspect, and it's a high book, a highly graded book. But I can't believe I've gone 35 years without reading it. So
you mean you've never read it before? You've read it before, but you just haven't read it in 35 years.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
right.
Mm-hmm. Because I've read it a few times, or once or twice since it originally came out. So
yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Well, we want to CLZ
shake it out.
Shake it out. All right.
Yeah.
So let's see here. I guess I could turn my video back on here. Okay. There's a dark mode on this now. Oh, Serenity, no power in the verse. So people thinking of stories or people who have had a falling from grace. This is this, of course, is based on Joss Whedon's Firefly, which I loved that show when it was coming out. And then, of course, you talk about we'll talk about things that have come out about Joss Whedon, but
right.
that did not. This was much later that all this stuff I became aware of it. So anyway, Serenity, no power in the verse. This is actually art by Georges Genti, writer Chris Robertson. It has the Joss Whedon stamp of approval. It has a 30th anniversary cover. So this is back from 2016, which that doesn't seem quite right, but oh my goodness. But anyway, I enjoyed Firefly immensely. Actually, I didn't discover it till the show was already over. So I found it on DVD box set, and I was buying everything Firefly that came out comic book wise. I have not bought anything Firefly in quite a while, but so that's sitting there in my collection. So there you go.
That's something I want to watch sometime. I used to hear you and Dan talk about it all the time, but
I've always wanted to too, but I think I've watched the first episode 12 different times, and I just never got past the first episode. I think I just fall asleep in the middle of it.
So the big argument that you'll hear about that is which first episode did you watch?
Do you watch Serenity, or do you watch
the
show?
Because like in the show, the first episode that they aired was, if I remember right, was the train heist, which because they decided they needed a more action-oriented first episode, but there actually was a separate episode, which I don't remember which one. Maybe it aired second or third, which was actually supposed to be the first episode. So I think on the DVDs, they have them in the correct order. And notice I said DVDs. That's how long ago I had watched this. But so yeah, it depends on which first episode you watch.
Oh, okay.
The train heist as the first episode, or what was supposed to be the pilot as the first episode.
I think the pilot is what I've actually watched. Starts out with like the war scene and everything.
Yeah. Okay. So if you could not get through that first episode, then it's not for you. If you didn't love it, love it immediately, it's probably, you probably won't like the rest of it. Yeah.
You want me to go?
Either one.
How about it?
Well, appropriately enough, this is Batman, Volume 1, Issue 280, with a cover by Ernie Chan, writer David Van Reed. I don't know that I know that writer. And I'm sorry, the cover.
Relation.
Okay. The cover and pencils by Ernie Chan, and it's a cover I remember seeing. I recognize from way back. It's of the 30-cent era of comics, and Batman swinging through Gotham with a big clock in the background, and he's saying 1 o'clock, time for crime to stop dead in Crime City, or in Gotham City. And maybe he's swinging down there to Joker to strangle him. I don't know. I'm sure I bought this or got it when I was a kid. I take that back. I bought it back in 2020 at Campus Comics.
Woohoo.
Yeah. Okay.
Shad?
All right, let's see what we got. I'm shaking, but it's not going. There we go. It's the Image 30th Anniversary Anthology, issue 1, which has a bunch of it's an anthology series that ran for 12 issues. I think it's done now. I did actually read this. And one of its big things was that it has this side story that's within the massive universe called Shift. That's, I think, like the first 2, 3, 4 maybe issues of it. But my favorite story in this is is it Andrea Moody story that she does with Jeff Johns called The Blizzard, which I think runs the entire 12 issues of that. But just an anthology. I can't help myself but to buy anthologies when they come out.
All right. So let's see. What do we got coming up next, Shad?
Next, we have the July previews for items that ship generally in September.
And hopefully we'll talk a little bit about The Flash on that episode as well.
I think that, yeah.
Of course, at this one, I wouldn't be upset if you guys didn't watch it ever, and we didn't have to talk about it.
We're gonna talk like for an hour about it. Just an hour straight on The Flash.
And Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you besides podcasts, actually, in addition to emailing you at podcasts or us at podcasts@birdcomics.com, you got another episode of your podcast out, right?
Yeah, it just was dropped, I believe, yesterday. Is that right?
Sure.
And this was Arena Comics and Gaming was the shop that I visited on Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow, and it was in Panama City. And the book that we reviewed, which was, by we, I do mean the three of us, was Chew, the first volume of Chew. And I got a big kick out of doing that one with you guys. That was one of the more enjoyable ones we've done.
And since that one, I have gone through and read the subsequent 4 volumes that were on Comixology, so I'm halfway through Chew.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So yeah, something you mentioned that you've asked me to bring up any episodes that have just come out on Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow, but I've never really actually said, hey, go listen to Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. It's on, I know, the Apple feed and probably some other podcast feeds, but yeah, it's sort of a spinoff from our main show here, and
there are
have a
6
lot of fun.
episodes out now as we record. So
6 episodes out, and I think I'm up to 22 total interviews. So a lot to come, just if I can fit in the time to do the reviews.
Yeah, and prior to that one, episode 5 was Emerald City Comic Games and Toys, and then Invincible with somebody who wasn't Scott and Shad.
That's right. That was Dan Brown, a former Campus Comics Cast co-host, and yeah, that came out, I guess, since the last episode that we dropped for previews, didn't it? Okay. Yep. So yeah, there's a lot of variety, I'd say, and it kind of forces me to get outside of my normal superhero adventure box.
And hey, while we're talking about stuff like that, I want to give a huge shout out to Eric's from the Long Box Review. He's been posting on our Facebook page, and it's very encouraging what he's been saying about us. So thank you, Eric, for your positive comments. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and not to give too many hints away, but you all, if you listen to the next episode, you're going to hear Eric's voice on Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. So yeah, so and yeah, Eric does us a lot of big favors by sharing us on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. So and having comics. So Scott's exactly right. It's encouraging to get that kind of feedback.
Yeah, you can check out his stuff at longboxreview.com. He's got 234 as we record episodes, which cover everything from comics to Star Trek to there's a whole Legion Superheroes podcast that's separate from the other part of it. So lots of details there. So so now, Mike, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and talk to you, where would they do that at?
Well, on Twitter, it's Mike Atchison 5. Very original name. I don't even have one of those, descriptions of what I am, what I do, it's just Mike Atchison 5. I'm there. And on email, it's m.atchison90 @gmail.com.
Chad, what about you?
You can find me on Facebook at Shad Schubert, ShaadSchubert, and be on the lookout for some new music from the Shad and Thomas side of things. we've got a new EP that's going to be coming out in July.
Ooh. And where will that be dropping at first?
Everywhere. It'll be on Spotify and YouTube, iTunes, all that good stuff.
Cool. All right. And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURG comics.com, with links to social media, email address, eBay store. And we'll be back soon with previews.
Okay. Oh, Scott, your phone. I've got people now asking me about this Mars crap. And I said, okay, this is the other third of our podcast got accomplished. He has the power of the producer, and he likes the idea of the show being called Mars because it stands for, I don't know, maybe it's just Mike Atchison Roadshow and he likes the acronym Mars. I don't know, but that's it. That's exactly what it is. Yep. I said nobody gets it but me and Shad, but that's a lie. So I thought you'd get a kick out of that. Okay, I'm glad somebody noticed. Hey, somebody's noticing. Mike's face is as red as the Mars. Oh, Lord. I told you I happen to have one every single time, so that's pretty good. Yeah, I saw I can keep coming up with something, so. And I'll always win because I always rename every single episode the file to Mars. Oh, yeah. So, well, so there you go. That's what I said, the power of the producer. Yeah, it's not that MC, RS, MC space, blah, 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 blah. That was actually Shad's first invention, so I just stuck with it. Never use spaces in computer file names. Did I use a space in there? Well, in the file that I get every time from Mike, it has a space in it. Oh, yeah, I think years before you just put. I don't know. I would put like MCRS1. I would have just done it as like presidential name. Because it just messes up the. It just creates problems. Yeah. I mean, I just rename it. It's not a problem. I mean, I can just rename it. But like, if you've ever been to a web page for like, you go to a PDF and there's this random %2f in the URL or the URL, as some people like to call it. It took the space and it didn't know what to do with it, so I had to put in that %2f, which is like ASCII code for a space. It's got to convert to a character, yeah. Yeah, so it just messes things up, makes things look ugly. I don't want that for you because I just rename it. It doesn't affect me at all. So I'm gonna rename it anyway, unless you name it. I know you are. Maybe I'll just start naming it Mars. That's right. Okay, it's MARS, and then I'm doing 3 digits for the number. Even though you're on 6, it's 006. Oh, that's true. That's where your experience comes in. I'm planning for 1,000. So yeah. Yep. So just FYI. I got my hands full just doing the content.